If you replay conversations in your head hours or even days after they happen, analyzing what you said, what you should have said, you're not obsessed or crazy. Psychology reveals you're demonstrating a level of self-awareness and social intelligence that most people completely lack, and this mental replay serves crucial psychological functions that improve your relationships and self-understanding. Let's talk about something that happens in your mind that you've probably never told anyone about. After a conversation ends, you replay it. Not once, dozens of times. You hear the dialogue again in your head. You analyze your words, their responses, the tone, the pauses, the facial expressions. You think about what you could have said differently. You worry about how you came across. You replay awkward moments over and over, cringing at yourself. You analyze their reactions, trying to decode what they really meant. And this can go on for hours, days, sometimes weeks after a single conversation. People who don't do this can't comprehend why you're still thinking about that. They tell you to just let it go or stop overthinking. But here's what neuroscience and psychology reveal. Your conversation replay isn't obsessive disorder or social dysfunction. It's sophisticated social processing, self-reflection, and emotional intelligence in action. And it serves multiple adaptive functions that improve your social skills and self-awareness over time. Research from cognitive psychology and neuroscience shows that conversation replay is a form of what scientists call autobiographical memory consolidation, combined with social post-processing. When you replay a conversation, your brain isn't just remembering, it's analyzing, learning, and integrating the social interaction into your understanding of yourself and others. Studies using brain imaging show that when people mentally replay social interactions, they activate the same brain regions involved in the original conversation, plus additional regions involved in self-reflection, emotional regulation, and theory of mind. You're not just remembering, you're learning from the interaction in ways that people who don't replay conversations never achieve. Here's what separates conversation replayers from people who forget interactions immediately. You have high social awareness and strong need for self-improvement. When you replay a conversation, you're essentially conducting a post-game analysis. Athletes watch game footage to improve performance. You're doing the same thing with social interactions. Research shows that people who engage in this kind of social post-processing develop better communication skills over time because they're actively learning from each interaction. You're not stuck in the past, you're mining the past for lessons that improve your future interactions. Let's talk about the specific psychological functions that conversation replay serves. First, social calibration. You're figuring out if what you said landed the way you intended. Did they understand you? Were they offended? Did you communicate effectively? Second, relationship maintenance. You're analyzing the health of your relationships by reading subtle cues you might have missed in real time. Third, self-evaluation. You're assessing your own social performance and identifying areas for improvement. Fourth, emotional processing. You're working through feelings that the conversation triggered. Fifth, meaning-making. You're trying to understand what the conversation reveals about you, them, and your relationship. These are all sophisticated cognitive and emotional processes that serve your psychological development. Here's the neuroscience that validates your experience. Research shows that the brain's default mode network, active during rest and mind wandering, is specifically designed for this kind of social processing. When you're replaying a conversation, your brain is engaging in what neuroscientists call mental time travel. You're revisiting the past to simulate different outcomes and prepare for future interactions. Studies show this ability is uniquely human and highly sophisticated. Your conversation replay isn't pathology. It's your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, learn from social experience. Research on rumination versus reflection reveals a crucial distinction. Rumination is repetitive thinking that increases distress without producing insight. You keep replaying the same thoughts in circles without learning anything new. Reflection is purposeful analysis that produces insight and learning. You replay the conversation, extract lessons, and move forward with new understanding. Most conversation replay is actually reflection, not rumination. You're analyzing to learn, not torturing yourself pointlessly. The key difference is whether you're gaining insight. If you're learning something about yourself, others, or communication from each replay, you're reflecting productively. Let's address the specific types of conversations you replay most. Research shows people replay conversations that were emotionally significant, socially ambiguous, or involved conflict or vulnerability. You replay the difficult conversation with your boss because you're trying to decode their response and plan your next move. You replay the awkward interaction with a friend because you're trying to figure out if you damaged the relationship. You replay the vulnerable moment where you shared something personal because you're assessing whether it was safe to do so. These aren't random replays. You're replaying the interactions that matter most and where you have the most to learn. Here's the perfectionism component. If you're someone who replays conversations obsessively, you probably have high standards for yourself in social situations. You want to communicate clearly, be understood correctly, not hurt anyone's feelings, and maintain positive relationships. Research shows that perfectionists engage in more post-event processing because they're constantly evaluating their performance against high internal standards. You're not abnormally self-critical. You're holding yourself to standards that reflect how much you care about your relationships and communication quality. Studies on social anxiety reveal that people with social anxiety replay conversations more frequently and with more negative focus than non-anxious people. But here's what's important. The replay itself isn't the problem. It's whether the replay is realistic or catastrophic. If you're replaying the conversation and accurately assessing what happened, you're engaging in healthy processing. If you're replaying it and catastrophizing, assuming the worst possible interpretations, imagining that people hate you, or believing one awkward moment ruined everything, then you're ruminating anxiously. The solution isn't to stop replaying, it's to make your replays more realistic and balanced. Let's talk about what you're actually learning from conversation replay. First, you're developing metacognitive awareness, understanding how you think and communicate. Second, you're improving your theory of mind, your ability to understand others' perspectives. Third, you're building emotional intelligence, recognizing how emotions influence communication. Fourth, you're identifying patterns, noticing recurring communication issues you can work on. Fifth, you're preparing for future interactions, mentally rehearsing better responses. These are all valuable skills that improve over time specifically because you engage in conversation replay. Here's the memory consolidation piece. Neuroscience research shows that memory consolidation, the process of converting short-term memories into long-term storage, happens partly during sleep but also during wakeful replay. When you replay a conversation, you're strengthening the memory and extracting important information to store long-term. People who don't replay conversations lose valuable social information because they never consolidate it properly. You're building a richer database of social knowledge that informs future interactions. Research on regret and counterfactual thinking reveals another function. When you replay a conversation and think, "I should have said this instead," you're engaging in counterfactual simulation, imagining alternative scenarios. Studies show this improves future decision-making. You're essentially running practice scenarios in your mind, which prepares you to handle similar situations better next time. This is sophisticated cognitive training, not useless obsessing. Let's address the shame piece. You probably feel embarrassed about how much you replay conversations. You think everyone else just moves on while you're stuck analyzing. But research suggests that most people engage in some conversation replay. You might just do it more consciously and thoroughly than average. And the people who never replay conversations aren't necessarily healthier. They might be missing opportunities for growth and self-awareness that you're actively pursuing. Here's what's important to understand. There's a difference between productive reflection and destructive rumination. Productive reflection has these characteristics. You gain new insights, You feel resolved after processing. You develop action plans for improvement. You eventually move on. Destructive rumination has these. You loop through the same thoughts without new understanding. You feel worse after replaying. You don't extract actionable lessons. You can't let it go. If your conversation replay is mostly productive, it's a strength. If it's mostly destructive, you might benefit from strategies to make it more productive. Studies show that writing about conversations you're replaying helps convert rumination into reflection. When you write out what happened and what you learned, you externalize the processing and often reach resolution faster than when you just think in circles. Talking to a trusted friend about the conversation can also help. They can offer perspective you're missing and help you see the interaction more realistically. Research on highly sensitive people reveals that they engage in deeper processing of all stimuli, including social interactions. If you're highly sensitive, conversation replay is part of your deeper processing style. You're not overthinking. You're processing at the depth your nervous system requires. Trying to force yourself to process more shallowly would actually be fighting your nature. Let's talk about the relationship between conversation replay and social skill development. Longitudinal research shows that people who engage in moderate levels of conversation replay develop better communication skills over time compared to people who never reflect on interactions. You're essentially getting extra practice and learning from every conversation. Over years, this compounds into significantly better social intelligence. Your replay habit is training you to be an excellent communicator. Here's the empathy connection. When you replay conversations, you're often trying to understand the other person's perspective, what they meant, how they felt, why they responded that way. This constant perspective-taking builds empathy. Research shows that people who regularly engage in this kind of social perspective-taking score higher on empathy measures. Your conversation replay isn't self-centered, it's actually deeply other-oriented. The truth about replaying conversations is this: it's a sign of self-awareness, social intelligence, and commitment to growth. You're not obsessed with the past. You're learning from it. You're not overthinking. You're thinking deeply about things that matter. You're not crazy. You're consciously developing skills that others develop unconsciously or not at all. The key is ensuring your replay is productive reflection that moves you forward, not destructive rumination that keeps you stuck.